Right, let's come to the studio and talk to the analyst, the researcher. My colleague has put out all the data from 2020 and, how that is going to play out in 2024. What's your impression of, a reflection of the results then and what we should be expecting this time around?
Well, I don't think we are going to have any surprise from this election. I think the power of incumbency is going to play a major role in how the election will shape out. There's been no buzz around the election like the Edo election that was just concluded recently. And interestingly, I think there should be buzz around it, but I think Ondo citizens happen to be a lot more, they've conducted themselves, the politicians, the elite and the people of Ondo State have conducted themselves really well because the former deputy governor, just like the current governor now, who was a deputy to Akere, they are both vying against each other. And you will expect some buzz around that election. But they've conducted themselves well. They've been gentlemanly in their approach, and they've played politics relatively fair. So yeah. I do believe that I do not expect surprises, but surprises are welcome.
Yeah, surprises are welcome. But like you said, not very expectant to see a change in the dynamics. I will come back to Ondo, but let's go over to get some update on the local government elections in Ogun State. My colleague, Benard Akede, is on the ground, and we have him live now. Benard, it's good to see you again, away from the sun this time. So where are you, and what is the latest? Is the process still ongoing?
Thank you for having me again. The process is still ongoing. I'm currently in polling unit 11, ward 17, if I'm not mistaken. And as a matter of fact, we are now in the counting stage of the election for some places, like this particular unit where I am at the moment, and you'll get to see what's going on now. The major challenge that most people who I have spoken to say they have is with the turnout of the elections. I know that in Ondo State, there's also been complaints about voter apathy. And that's on the larger scale because it's a state government election. But here it's a local government elections. Many say that they didn't expect that the turnout, will be fantastic because it's local government. But then not that it will be this poor, sadly. Very, very few people have turned out so far. And then the second major challenge is the time that the voting itself actually started because of the time that the electoral materials arrived. Now, also, again, bear in mind that this election is not conducted by INEC, the national body. However, it's conducted by the State Electoral Commission, that's OGSEC, Ogun State Electoral Commission, Ogun State Independent Electoral Commission. So if fingers will be pointed this time, not to INEC, but to Ogun State. And then I met a gentleman who also complained, but said he wanted to speak off camera, talking about how probably the government should look towards having INEC also at some point begin to conduct and oversee local government elections as well, just so that we can avoid certain of these very avoidable challenges that we're beginning to see in elections like this.
All right, before we talk about the poll participation, because I'd really want to talk a bit more about that, I just wanted to know if there's been any response from INEC as to the concerns being raised on the disbursement of election materials and the time that the process is starting.
If INEC could say anything, that will probably be later, not now. Again, the election is conducted by the state, so it's the State Electoral Commission, Ogun State Independent Electoral Commission that's handling this. I would see if after the election we'll be able to get audience from the State Electoral Commission and to channel these complaints to their doorstep, because there's so many people complaining about the time, the lateness that this election started. And then after that, we also want to see if INEC can also take up some of these complaints as well. I hear that there have been, there's been word in the National Assembly trying to see how there could be some legislation, how there could be some change of hands, how they could actually involve the national body, that's talking about INEC, when it comes to local government elections. If that eventually would hold water, if it will be business as usual, well, only time will tell. But of course, when you begin to have challenges like these, then just maybe INEC themselves should be called in to oversee, even if it's not to completely control, but maybe at some point just to oversee and to ensure that things work better. So we'll keep our ears to the ground and our eyes open to see and to hear if there'll be any response, first of all, from the state electoral commission, and then from the national level, talking about INEC as well.
For the few persons that have come out to cast their ballot, what are they saying is the driving reason that's making them, take the time to come out despite the seeming apathy on the process?
Oh, fantastic. I think it's the basic reason why most people think there should be some change in power or change in government. And that's because certain things that they need, that the people need, have not been put in place. I've been able to interview a few people, and you will get to see those interviews, subsequently. Some have complained about, of course, the state of the roads. There's been huge complaints about that. There are complaints about, basic amenities that they think should be provided by local government, water supply, maybe primary schools, basic education, basic health care, the basic things that you and I know should be provided by the government of the day, whether it is federal, state, or local level. In this case, we're looking at the local level because they are the closest communication or connection, that the people have to the government. So it's nothing out of the ordinary that people are complaining about. And there's one particular guy who I spoke to. You will get to see that interview, I'll show you later. He coincidentally is a government teacher and a lecturer, and he said that what we teach theoretically or what we learn and teach in school is completely different from what emanates when it comes to practical government and governance. And then he even threw his hat into the ring, wanted to contest eventually as a councillor within his area. And then one challenge he talked about was that, come election time, you see so many polling units, so many wards, but when it comes to actual practical or practicing of governance, you see that government is far from the people. They don't get to feel the presence of government, even in the local levels. And it's quite disappointing that now that they have the chance to come out and cast their vote and either to change the government in power or to support the government that's doing well, either way, you have turnouts as poor as this, unfortunately.
Media coverage. Earlier, when we talked about this, you said it seems News Central is the major national broadcaster that is covering this local government election. Is that still the case, or perhaps you've seen some other major news outfit also covering the process, aside from the local media?
And so it's still just the local media I've come to see around. Again, there are 20 local governments in the states. We're not able to go around all the 20. So I would like to give benefit of the doubt and say maybe in some of the local governments we've not been able to touch, there could be some other, broader media outfits that have been covering there. But so far, so good. Just us, News Central, and then some of the domestic media outfits within the state that we've come to see, which also may be a cause for concern. Yet, though the election is, on the local government level, you would still expect that there should be proper media coverage for such elections. If we're looking at hyper-local stories, which is one of our key points at News Central anyway, if we're looking at hyper-local stories, we're looking at bringing information closer to the people and then bringing people to the information as well, bringing government to the people and vice versa. You'd expect that there will be better coverage for this. Earlier, I think you asked me, or other colleagues who asked whether the election in Ogun State may have taken the shine from local government election. Again, maybe that's the case here. But again, I would have hoped that there will be better coverage of local government elections, just so that there's more information, to the people and from the people concerning what's happening in the local level. And again, remember that we're still talking about autonomy of local government. I do not think that this is the way to go about local government autonomy if we really want to make it a thing that should be considered or that should be taken seriously.
Benard, before we let you go, what stage is the process where you are at now? Are the officials just coming together, or people are actually voting where you are now?
Okay, so where I am now, voting, I believe, has been concluded, and they are now counting and collating. You can see that on the screen now. In some other places, in many places that we visited, it took quite a while for the process to get to this stage. Some places, they finish voting or they're just waiting because 2 p.m., I believe, was when we were supposed to stop. So at some places, again, because of the voter turnout, very quickly voting had stopped, but the electoral officials were just waiting for more people to come or for the time to get to when they need so that they can begin to count. But here where we are, counting has commenced. Observers are here looking and waiting to hear the results of those who have, of the votes that have been cast and the votes that are being counted.
Benard, thank you as always.
Thank you for having me.
Bimbo, I just wanted to share your thoughts on the submission by Benard before we move back to Ondo State. I mean, a local government election, is it time for us to begin to do more to pay attention, especially with the Supreme Court ruling recently?
Well, the Supreme Court ruling is just, in principle, actually. In reality, a lot of people do not think that local government is actually playing a key role or a major role in governance. Ogun State, where the election is currently going on, it would interest you to know that local governance is absent in Ogun State. Most of the inner roads are in very bad condition. People don't have a sense of local governance. So I'm not shocked now that people are not turning out for local government elections, because most of them might see it as a waste of time because they do not feel the impact of local government. But I hope with the Supreme Court ruling, our political elite will take it upon themselves to start to give local government the recognition, the resources they need to actually perform. After that, maybe we'll start seeing high turnout with local government elections.
Well, I mean, speak to the people of Ogun. What is the implication of this lack of involvement in the electoral process, especially at the grassroots? We've talked so much about the importance of the grassroots governance in the overall structure of governance in the country. So impress on us the implication we're looking at.
I cannot speak enough about the implication of political apathy. We are all political animals, and we all live on this social contract that we have signed with the government. When we stay away from elections like this, we leave our future. We leave our future to the hands of people who have no stake in our lives and how things turn out. We leave politics to those who have no conscience. What you see play out across Africa is as a result of political apathy amongst our people. You see the last US election, you had over 150 million people turn out to vote, and the Nigerian election, you had less than 25% of the population voting. And the implication is that you leave the politicians to decide who comes in. It will interest you to know that at the local government level, I can predict what is happening in Ogun State currently. It is those who the politicians have mobilized who have actually come out to vote, not the populace themselves who feel the pinch of bad governance.
All right, let's go back to Ondo State. You're looking at visuals of the process from different locations as the people cast their ballot. For this process, we have over 2 million people that are registered voters, and of that, we have 50% male and 49% female. Earlier, Onyechi talked about the fact that of the entire figure of those that are participating, I mean, as candidate, we only have 2 running mates as female and 0 candidate as a female governorship aspirant. What are your thoughts on female participation in this? I mean, I've seen some of them in the course of the report by my colleague casting their ballot. But what is your general impression of how women can be more inclusive in the process?
This might take time because...
Go ahead. I think we have a little bit of time, 5 minutes.
Well, I'm saying for women to actually become more visible in politics, it might take time in our climb. It would interest you to know that Yoruba culture actually is not patriarchal. Women played a key role in pre-colonial Africa. Colonialism came pushed women down the spectrum, and this is what we see play out currently in our political climate. If you recall, Oyerunke Oyewumi actually said that Yoruba culture is genderless. But what we see today from the projections of our movies and uninformed populace, they actually do think that our culture does not exonerate or glorify women. And that is totally wrong. Women need to take their pride of place because we need to find out who we truly are. And when you look at people like Efusheto Anibura and other notable women who made their mark in pre-colonial Africa, you can start to encourage women and buoy them to action, to take charge. Because what we have seen so far with what men have done across the country, it is nothing to write home about. They have totally failed. Maybe we should try another gender for a change.
Try. That's a good one. Let's talk about political parties this time around. 17 political parties are taking part in this election, but realistically, we have just about 3 candidates, and even the third one is, the court just ruled, and they are just getting their bearing. What worries you about this kind of landscape where you have 17 political parties and then you have just 3 that are dominant? And then take on that question and then I'll put the other part so I don't cluster.
Well, they make it look like a jamboree. Elections, I mean, there's a new trend in our political climate now where candidates now step down for a leading candidate. And we know how these things play out. It's all planned. You know, we saw during the presidential primaries of the APC where a number of candidates, you know, dropped for the current president. The same has happened in Ondo State where 3 contestants stepped down for the APC candidate. We make politics look like a sham when we start to go that route. I think people who are invested in the process should be contesting. I don't know what INEC will do to sieve out the weed from this process, because as we know, there are 4 major political parties that stand a chance of producing the next governor, which is the PDP, APC, Labour Party, which is currently in disarray, and the ZLP. But we do know that it's a 2-horse race between APC and PDP in reality. And I do hope that we can have a situation where INEC creates the environment where we do not have charlatans, you know.
I mean, that's what some persons are describing, the emergence of these other parties that are not known. They're saying people that go into a process knowing fully well that they're not going to win. What could be their purpose? Is it to maybe subsequently socially say, I was a one-time governorship aspirant or a governorship candidate? Is that something that, you know, is a motivation that should be checked?
Of course, you see most of these people parading themselves as former contestants, knowing fully well that they've not invested enough, they've not done the rallies needed, they've not communicated with the people, the electorate do not know them. And why do we allow such people cloud the system? You have our ballot papers being extremely long with a population that is not so literate. You complicate the process by doing that. Indeed.
If you're just joining us, we are continuing our coverage of the Ondo off-cycle elections. The state so far has had 19 governors since inception in February of 1976. 18 local governments are going to make the decision. I just mentioned 17 political parties. Some of the issues that we've talked about in the course of this coverage is the power of incumbency. We've also talked about security. We've talked about INEC's performance so far. Don't forget, on the sidelines, we're also covering local government elections in Ogun State. And just a short while ago, we spoke with my colleague Benard Akede, who talked about voter apathy and a really, really poor turnout of people. I have Bimbo still. Bimbo, talk to us about the power of incumbency and how it continues to stay relevant in Nigerian politics? Is it possible for us to have a situation where that becomes null and can only become operational if the incumbent did what was needed to gain the trust of the people?
Well, until we become a truly democratic state, maybe the power of incumbency will continue to play a major role in who becomes what in an election process. You know, it is because of this kind of situation that people have even argued against state policing. And from the way things are, we cannot shy away from it. So we need to start building institutions rather than building leaders or politicians. When we have strong institutions that can truly check anybody, when institutions become stronger than individuals, then we'll start seeing the power of incumbency play less and less role in our politics. You have a governor that can spend the resources of the state as it will. You have a situation where the governor controls the security structure of the state, to his advantage. You have a situation where policies and government actions are, done to woo voters when voters are not convinced that the resources spent on them is actually for them, is what they deserve, but they feel grateful to the governor for spending their commonwealth. We would always have governors who are in power. They would always have an edge in an election. It's not a fair game at all.
So how do we begin to work on that?
Like I said, building strong institutions.
True. Mimbo, thank you so far for your submission.